When you're in a survival state, every single piece of that is important. I can love the potential, but we're also then called to love the potential out of people. So pay attention to what's the need of your city, and then build something to fit those things. I think we have a lot of modern day churches that are very pastor-centered. Right. And if you have a pastor-centered church, inherently that's not going to be a very trauma-informed space.
Hello friends, I'm Reverend Dr. Jose Martinez, and I'm with New Church Ministry, and we are here in Springfield, Missouri. We are in Springfield, Missouri because we are going to visit the connecting grounds that is led by Reverend Christie Love. Oftentimes I get the question, how do we live into this Disciples Next framework? And the connecting grounds, and with the leadership of Reverend Love, we have found a ministry that is really incarnating to be the good news, to share the good news, and to serve from our doorsteps to the ends of the earth. Now let's go visit the connecting grounds. So Christie, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, thanks for coming.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting to see this ministry and the process that you've gone through. Could you tell how the connecting grounds came to be a vision for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I grew up in the church, grew up in an evangelical church, and I had a series of religious trauma kind of events. And I kind of came to this place in my life where I felt like I hit a crossroads. It was either push away from the church out of frustration and anger and like a disappointment in the experiences that I kept having and others kept having, or I needed to find a way to lean in and help challenge the church to be what I believed theologically we were called to be. Okay. And so we sought out to plant a church that was doing church differently. Right. And everything we did was very trauma informed and really kind of seeking to morph this social gospel justice kind of outward expression versus this inward facing church model, which we've kind of seen more traditionally.
So this is all part of the trauma-informed ministry that you're proposing that all churches need to do.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think if you look across the board, right, there's different levels of trauma awareness in every aspect of church life. It affects our preaching, it affects worship songs, it affects our liturgy and our practices, but it also affects our outreach and how we do things in that capacity. So this building houses our Family Connection program, where we supervise visits for kids in the foster care system with their parents. And so we partner with Children's Division. It's a program that we've actually expanded to 7 different churches across the state of Missouri. So it's something that we can train a church to do. But inside this building, there's obviously a lot of triggers. There's a lot of dysregulation that happens. It's hard when kids have to go and parents have to separate again and those kind of things. So we intentionally put grounding techniques across this room so that we can kind of try to help people build those coping skills as they're going through a visit. I think one of the principles that we planted the connecting grounds on was this idea that church was never designed to be a noun. Church was designed to be a verb. It was a call to action. It was a call to gather and to go and to eat and to do and to love, and all of those were action words. And I think, as history kind of unfolded, we all tended to kind of settle into routines, and the worship became the center stage, the actions, the liturgy, all of those kind of things. And in doing so, I think we sacrificed a lot of the verb type of church and love and connection and building. And so I think that's a really important thing for us to deconstruct what church is supposed to be.
Right.
I talk about that a lot, that there is individual deconstruction that I think a lot of us are going through, but there is institutional deconstruction that needs to be happening with churches as a whole. And who are we? What does a building mean? How do we steward a building and space? And how do we reimagine things and innovate in so many ways that I know New Church Ministry is leading conversations?
We're at the Connecting Grounds Outreach Center. Can you tell us a little bit of how you started this big outreach center there's lots of stuff in here.
Yeah, there is. So the Outreach Center came about when we were on Commercial Street, which is where we initially planted the church. COVID hit, and so we started doing all of our outreach stuff out on the sidewalk. So nightly meals, pop-up medical clinics. We'd pull, blankets and clothing outside because we couldn't have people inside the building. That eventually led to our lease being terminated because there were so many people outside in the parking lot, even though the community was shut down. And so we were told that we either needed to change the dynamics of our ministry or change our location. And so we chose to trust for a new location.
Yes.
And we headed out on the west side of town. There was a DOC property that was given to us to use. And so this building we found not far from that church. And so we were able to convert what used to be an old flea market into the outreach center.
Okay.
So trying to pack as many services as we can into here. One of my favorite things that we do is we have what's called our volunteer program. And so that program is kind of how this building is ran. So individuals can come here and do volunteer work to help keep the outreach center running, sort donations. Eventually we work our way up into the front and being able to engage with clients and things like that. But essentially with that volunteer program, they earn hours. Those hours can be used towards court fines, sober living house fees. We can put them towards using storage that we have here for 2 hours a month. So lots of different ways you can cash out hours so that we're really trying to help everybody overcome barriers.
And I'm assuming that you're also helping teaching those grounding techniques, which would cause a transformation for the whole community.
Mm-hmm. It's also trying to get people connected to trauma-informed resources. So as we're starting to talk to someone and we can start to piece together, okay, you've been in the medical area multiple times and we clearly have some substance abuse issues, and let's start to talk about that and what has sobriety looked like. And then we start to realize, ooh, we went through this horrible thing and we never got help for it. And,
right.
What would you be interested in maybe exploring some counseling? Can we help you apply for that? And kind of trying to walk through those steps one step at a time.
Right. So we are at St. John's Chapel, United Church of Christ.
Yes.
And this is where the connecting grounds meet as for fellowship and communion and all sorts of other things. So it's quite amazing. Like when we're thinking about trauma-informed ministry, like some people have some real trauma just entering the doors of an edifice that's called church.
Yep.
So how do you help people through that process?
Yeah, so this was an interesting journey for us because we do have some people with high degrees of religious trauma that attend here. So we use room dividers. And so we meet in the back half of the sanctuary. We set up tables and chairs, and then we use room dividers to kind of block off the pews and some of the more ornate stained glass and choir loft and those kind of things. But it's getting people comfortable in this space again. I look at this as a really great bridge building opportunity. And I think we do a lot of that work outside of the space, but eventually healing has to come back inside of that space.
Mm-hmm. Are there any kind of particular spiritual disciplines that you really highlight with that healing process, that healing journey for folks?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do grounding to start service every week. So usually Holly leads us through that as part of our worship. And so she'll write something original or, use poetry or something, or kind of walk through some breathing exercises and just kind of talk a little bit about that practice because, I think that's helpful for all of us in everyday life when we just feel a little anxious, learning how to ground ourselves in that space. We also try to do a lot of discussion and check-in throughout our services. So we have a pretty non-traditional service anyway. We don't do a traditional communion. We do dinner instead. We don't necessarily do a traditional sermon every single week. Sometimes we spend a lot more time in discussion. I think some of it is needing to understand religious trauma, what it looks like, what the sources of it are, how it can impact people. I think we have to have a fundamental understanding of those things. We also have to understand just the different ways that trauma and its impact can be mitigated by healthy community. And I think we have a lot of modern day churches that are very pastor-centered. Right. And if you have a pastor-centered church, inherently that's not going to be a very trauma-informed space because you're depending upon one person to do everything for everybody, and that's not possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if people don't go to Leadership Academy, they don't get a chance to encounter
hang
you
out
there.
and multiply. Yes.
What are some other ways that we can connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can always connect with the Connecting Grounds on Facebook and on Instagram and send a message there. Normally I see those. You can also just get a hold of me by email. I love talking to other pastors around the country. That's one of my big passions. And so I love the chance to just kind of brainstorm with people if they've got questions or ideas. I'm always happy to start a conversation. So you can always email me at Christie@theconnectinggrounds.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
You're so welcome. Thanks for coming.